Hello writers, come write with me. My name is Michaela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my channel, Write with Michaela. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. Today is Tuesday, and today we're going to discuss a few adjectives we should consider for some of our characters. These adjectives or terms are erudite, intrepid, and tenacious. Let's start with erudite. Erudite means having or showing great academic knowledge or learning. You can also use erudite to describe something such as a book or a style of writing. Some synonyms are literate, learned, scholarly, knowledgeable, cultured, cultivated, civilized, intellectual, clever, studious, sage. Now, certainly a lot of our protagonists may not know much of anything when they start off on their hero's journey. Think of Luke Skywalker. He was just a farmer, but then he found a hologram or video of Princess Leia, and he wanted to help her. He knew nothing of the Force at that point. However, in other stories, the protagonist starts off with a lot of knowledge. Think of Daniel Jackson in Stargate. He was very knowledgeable about ancient writings and languages and customs and traditions. And also, in that same show was Samantha. She was also an erudite. She knew a lot about the technology that they brought with them, how to program the gate, to get past some of the gate's safeguards. Very, very intelligent. Well, when we are writing, our characters will need information. But that doesn't mean we have to have an erudite. Someone that organizes battles will have strategic knowledge. Someone that knows how to put machines together or to build a trap will have the specialized knowledge of a tradesman. And those smarts aren't necessarily book smart or something learned from a book. A lot of times nowadays we do have books, computers for dummies, but a lot of times you learn that from somebody else. Some of those trades crafts, you don't learn that from a book. You learn from following somebody else around their shop and doing that kind of the smithing, the woodsmith, the metalsmith, the goldsmith, all those smiths, what they used to call them. Now we call them tradesmen. They learn from someone. So the question to ask yourself is, what kind of knowledge does my character need? Is there a teacher to teach this? Like Obi-Wan Kenobi. He taught Luke Skywalker about the Force. Is there a book your character can read to learn? In Harry Potter, he was going to wizarding school to learn, and he gained the right knowledge at the right time. Of course, in that series, Hermione Granger was the erudite. Now, if you join me for City of the Ancients, then the three siblings were reading the book City of the Ancients, and they were learning, but only Kirsha was more of an erudite. In Tahia, she knows a lot as well, and you will know from the story that she read her witch books every year. You even know that she didn't spend as much time on the book about herbs, but she reread that book when she thought she needed it. In my Miacha series, Miacha has libraries of books, and yes, that was plural, libraries, because she gives instructions for the Liggums to change out her libraries, certain points. So just in those three stories of mine that I've listed, and I have more stories, but just in those three, the main character is at least somewhat of an erudite. That, of course, is not to say you have to have an erudite in your story. Think of Beverly Hills Cop. In that movie, Eddie Murphy, as Axel Foley, had to think like the bad guys to anticipate their next crime. Eddie Murphy had to understand people, how they work together, how he could get information out of one person versus another person. So he really had to understand people. The same is true for many of the Jackie Chan movies. Jackie Chan had to know how the bad guys thought. He also had to know karate and be very good at it. In your books and stories, would having an erudite help you? Or do you need a character with street smarts or common sense, people smarts? Do you need a tradesman instead? Think of the movies you watch and the books you read, and leave a comment below on a character that is an erudite. Our next term is intrepid. It means fearless or adventurous. Some synonyms are fearless, unafraid, undaunted, unflinching, unabashed, bold, daring, audacious, adventurous, and heroic. The noun form is intrepidity. Some writers often use intrepid in a literary or humorous context to describe someone who feels no fear, is very bold or brave. Now, I'm not sure that I get the humorous effect of intrepid unless you're talking about Wile E. Coyote, the Bugs Bunny and Coyote. No matter what happened to him, he still chased Roadrunner. He still made his traps. So, I guess that would be the hilarious part. But for us, I'm talking about in the formal sense or the serious sense. So certainly in the formal or the serious sense, we can see how our hero or our protagonist would need to be intrepid or fearless. That's not to say they're always intrepid. Your protagonist could have doubts and fears, but then he or she could just proceed with what he feels the good guys need to do to win. In my Miacha series, at one point Miacha asked, I think she asked Commander Rochefort, did you ever think that maybe your best wasn't good enough? And he's like, I think that every time. So they can still be people, they don't have to be totally fearless, but they still would proceed with that intrepidness or intrepidation or intrepidity. Leave a comment below on an intrepid character in a book or movie. Our last term for today is tenacious. Tenacious is tending to keep a firm hold of something, clinging or adhering closely. It's not readily relinquishing a position or readily relinquishing a principle or course of action. It is determined. It is persisting in existence or not easily dispelled. It is persistent in maintaining, adhering to, or seeking something valued or desired. The synonym to tenacious is strong, but it isn't necessarily muscles. It is the will to keep going. This is not intrepid. Intrepid is no fear. This is to hold fast to something, be it a goal or a moral code. This is getting across the finish line. Sometimes you've seen even in the races where you have a runner where they fall or they hurt themselves, but they get up and they go to the finish, even if they're last. They still make it to that finish line. Well, that's tenacious behavior. Our heroes in our stories need tenacity or to be tenacious. When the antagonist throws everything in the way of our protagonist. Our protagonist needs to keep fighting the fight. They need to keep going. I'm sure we see people in our lives that just keep going, no matter what life throws at them. And hopefully we know some of these people who are still upbeat, or at least not depressed. I have a friend whose husband died. He had cancer, and so she had to do all the caretaking. Then after he passed away, her mom goes sick, and recently her mom passed away. My friend has to deal with all sorts of legal matters now to close out the estates. This court wants this court wants that. And she still has 2 children to raise. She's a very positive, happy person, and she just keeps going. So let's be clear. When I say tenacious, I'm not talking about someone who spent their rent money on drugs and then got beat up by a gang because they tried to cheat the gang out of some money. I'm not talking about someone who creates a lot of their own problems. I'm talking about problems or issues out of the person's control. This is a difference between having to handle issues that you or your character created versus having to handle issues or issues created by your antagonist. So the one where you're handling things that you create, that's not being tenacious. That's just handling your own mess, basically, or your character's own mess. I'm sure some of our characters can get in quite a mess. Now, when you handle what's thrown at you, just going and going, and my friend, she's had to be on the phone to figure out what form she needs to fill out and what affidavit she needs from whichever person. She has a lot of stuff that she has to do, but she just keeps going, and she stays calm, and she stays happy, and she has to, because she has 2 children depending on her to do that. So she's very tenacious, and she's very happy, and I wish I could be more like her. Now, we have talked about motivation and what motivates your character. Well, your protagonist will have to have a certain amount of tenacity to see the journey through. If you have no tenacity, you're not going to be able to come up with the motivation to go. Now, we have talked before about aggressive, passive-aggressive, passive, and assertive. Now, the first 2 terms I just named were more suited to use for your antagonist. And today's terms are more suited for your protagonist. That is not to say that you can't have an erudite antagonist. But if your antagonist is too smart, how will your protagonist win the battle of wits? Also, you realize that I gave synonyms. I gave a ton of synonyms for these terms. So you might think your character has grit instead of your character being tenacious. And that's great. That's fine. And I hope you realize that more important than the terms I gave today is the idea or the characteristics for your characters. Part of writing is character development. Your characters don't have to start out as intrepid or tenacious, but that might be something of the inner growth that he or she experiences or undergoes. Think of Kirsha. She didn't necessarily become intrepid or tenacious, but for her growth, she gained understanding and control over magic. So you have to have that transformation in the story. You don't have to become intrepid or tenacious. That could be a characteristic already there, or it could be part of the character's growth and transformation. There are a lot of options for us to use. I hope today's video gave you some useful terms to use in developing your characters as you take them along the journeys that you are creating for them. Leave a comment below on characteristics you use, and I certainly encourage and welcome synonyms to the terms I use. If you want to use grit instead of tenacity, then use that word. If you you don't have to use the synonyms I gave either. There's plenty of other synonyms or ways to think about it. So you could give me an idiom for one of the terms. That would be great as well. So please leave that in the comments. Join me Friday for Tahia, chapter 19, More Soldiers in the Mountains. Join me Tuesday for wordsmithing. Don't forget to visit my website, bymichaela.com, and read some character bios. If you hit the like and subscribe and the bell, then we will continue to write together. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, then please share it with them. This is Michaela with Write with Michaela. Bye for now.